if people just were more harmonized in their energy, a lot of the social problems would, not vanish overnight, but would get a lot better.
What are you talking about? Yoga looking like, meaning, and being.
The way I use it and intend to use it in psychedelic integration is a technology.
Does yoga have any relevance to the post-psychedelic state integration process?
These substances in general are not toxic.
What would a world look like in which yogic practices and psychedelics were regularly integrated? Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Webdelics podcast, where we're on a journey to find out the truth about plant medicine and psychedelics, to get rid of the myths and change the narrative. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and with us today is our special guest, Henry Kandel. Henry is a physics and cognitive science teacher and a certified yoga instructor, as well as the author of a forthcoming book called Yoga of the Ketamine State. This book discusses the surprising nexus between yoga and psychedelics. Henry is currently collaborating with yoga teachers, doctors, and the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society to develop and refine a practice that ties together psychedelic states with yoga. The goal of this method, the deep integration of yogic practices into psychedelic states, is to amplify and sustain the benefits of therapy and bring about more positive outcomes. And this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion because of what you're doing, Henry. Now, let's just frame the conversation a little bit. As I just mentioned, today's topic is about how and why psychedelics can integrate with yoga and how they can work together to lead to better health outcomes for those who are in need. Henry, we've been talking a lot on this show about the mental health crisis facing the Western world. And that is one thread of conversation that really is pushing psychedelics more and more into the mainstream because of the impact that it can have on that. Thinking about that in the context of yoga, I'm going to keep it real with you because that's what I do, okay?
Let's do it.
There are lots of people at my gym that take yoga. I've taken yoga. I got good stretches. I sweated. I had a good nap. I had a good nap afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
And it ain't pretty, by the way. But that being said, yoga is fun and all, and the people that are doing it and that I socialize with during yoga class are fun. But how on earth can this conceivably relate to anything concerning psychedelics, particularly mental health?
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Well, yeah, I mean, how did you feel when you were in Shavasana lying there after your yoga class? You felt pretty relaxed, right?
I felt
maybe energized.
Very relaxed.
Yeah.
It's sort of weird. I did feel relaxed and energized, yes. It's a weird thing to think about, but that's true, yeah.
See, focus on that paradox right there. The fact that you felt both relaxed and energized at the same time as a result of the yoga practice. So if you look at psychedelics, like just one of the basic experiences people have with microdosing is sometimes it breaks one way or the other. And if it goes south, if it doesn't work out for them, it's because the energy is not manageable for them. They report anxiety, they report they can't focus, it's jittery and stuff like that. It's a negative experience. Some people never do it again. And often that make or break right there comes down to that same kind of thing of, can you have a state of relaxation that also allows you to make use of this increased energy? And you boil it down, anxiety, depression. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead and finish.
Two sides of the same coin. Anxiety, depression. Think about that. So you say I felt relaxed, I felt energized. the sort of negative manifestation of that is I'm anxious and depressed. That seems like a paradox. So in terms of yoga, it's about understanding what that is as an energy imbalance in the body, that your fundamental power is being aimed at yourself and antagonizing yourself and creating negative states. If that resonates at all.
Well, it does, but I want to explore it a little bit more deeply. Look, your homie here is from Red State America. When I was growing up, and by the way, when I go back and see people, what I associate yoga with is just exercise, stretching. Now, I also will be honest, there are people I've known that are deep into the yoga world that view it almost as like an expression of their spirituality or of their religious orientation. And there are a lot of folks that are from more traditional Western religious backgrounds that I think understandably are a little bit uncomfortable with that.
Sure.
Part of what I'm curious about from your perspective is when you talk about yoga as a tool that can integrate with psychedelics and ultimately impact the mental health benefit of psychedelics, what are you talking about yoga looking like, meaning, and being?
Yoga, okay. So awesome question. So yoga is best seen in this context, the way I see it and the way I use it and intend to use it in psychedelic integration is a technology. It's a technology of the mind body.
Wow.
So it's,
what does that mean?
So taking paradoxes like that, like here I am, I'm lying there and I'm feeling simultaneously relaxed and yet energized. Or the negative manifestation, I'm feeling anxious, but I'm also feeling depressed. Mm-hmm. And yoga is a system that was developed over hundreds of years. It's not, you say, what does it look like? People have an image of a person in a stretchy posture, but really it's a lot of breath work. It's a lot of meditation practice. And it's a lot of basically like if you and I said, like, let's develop from scratch a technology with the goal being to analyze, figure out the workings of this mind body we find ourselves in. This thinking mind with all of these emotional responses and all this shit, all this complexity. And we said, let's figure out a technology, a process. Not external gadgets, but a technology within. And we said, let's apply it. It would look pretty much like yoga.
Really, really interesting. Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you then is that yoga is not just stretching, although stretching is part of it, but it is a way to essentially harmonize our minds and our bodies into some sort of optimal state.
That's very well put, Scott. Statement? That's awesome. Yep, spot on.
And
it's to optimize your flow.
When you say optimize the flow, what do you mean by that exactly? What is the flow?
Yeah, so that your energy, when you're, and I'm just talking about like, the energy that you get when you convert your food and you take the oxygen and you have this energy in your system. And you talk about a mental health crisis, a really fruitful way to look at that crisis is all of that energy is in most people is self-antagonizing energy. It's clenching, it's grabbing, it's creating internal pain, it's creating emotional pain. So yoga could be looked at as a technology for making your natural energy available to you.
Wow. And I assume then, again, not to totally break it down, but so there's complete clarity here, make it available to you in a way that is constructive and moves you and your life forward in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Sure, but if your goal was, and I'm not judging this as negative, but you said, I want to party longer, I want to have more endurance. I mean, your intentions, what you want to do in your life are up to you. But if you said, I want to party harder, and you practice yoga, it will help you party harder. I mean, because your energy it will be available to you, as opposed to with most people, their energy, at least partly, is self-antagonizing. That's why you have young people, and like I'm talking about some of my students who are very healthy, young people, and they are depressed. And when you talk to them, you get this like you've talked to people and you say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm okay." And the breath is barely flowing, and you can sense the clenching in the throat and the clenching in the core of the body, and the shoulders are slumped like this, and the posture becomes very negative, and the outcomes. Like, that's just a harder way to live. I mean, like, I'm 52. If I had to squander a lot of my energy on, like, internal clenching and holding all the time, I wouldn't have very much left.
It's funny. Throughout this series, I've talked at length about why I am so interested in the topic of psychedelics. And it is because of my own history with PTSD. Oh. And right from the first episode, I mentioned that in order to escape some of these negative outcomes in my life that were happening because of that issue, I was in counseling for 11 years in total. And one of the things that early on my first therapist had me work on was observing how I was encasing myself physically. What was going on with things like my shoulders, with my stomach, with my legs, with my arms, with my posture sitting down, and my breathing. And one of the things that she would ask me to do, I'd had a lot of anxiety because of these traumas that I was dealing with, was to begin to pinpoint where they were and to breathe, to begin to relax myself and to learn how to let them go. And if we think about yoga then as a more idealized and consistent practice, that intuitively speaks to me. Not only that, but then when we talk about how people manifest their anxieties or their frustrations or their anger or all of these other negative emotions physically, I've seen it myself. You look at people sometimes, you talk about how people express anger, a clenched jaw, tight fists, shoulders forward, all of those sorts of things. So actually, I can begin to see a relationship between outcomes with regards to mental health, particularly negative emotions, and a yogic practice helping them release that. But what I don't understand is, okay, that's interesting as one modality. What does that have to do with psychedelics, outside of the fact that psychedelics are potentially a different modality for dealing with the same issues?
Right. Well, let's to extend it beyond, psychedelics are awesome and yoga's awesome, so but mix them together. I think basically the psychedelic state provides tremendous opportunity. So if you said, I'm going to use a psychedelic practice to increase my learning capacity, or I'm an artist and I'm gonna use psychedelics creatively, those are all absolutely valid, and I think you'll succeed with those things. Mm-hmm. I think yoga's important, but when I say yoga, I want to make it clear that what you were doing in to better deal with PTSD is what I'm talking about when I say yoga. I mean, maybe it wasn't called that. Absolutely. Anytime, if you had said boil down yoga, boil down all of the asana practice, that's the stretchy postures, the pranayama, which is the breath practice, all the forms of meditation, into one word, I would say awareness. Mm. You're trying to gain awareness of what this body-mind is, what the thoughts are, what the feelings are, what the holding pattern in the shoulders to show defensiveness, all that stuff. Anytime you increase your awareness, it to use some language from one of these old texts, it liberates. That thing that was a clenching holding that you may have had from childhood, suddenly you bring it into awareness and you're, I want to say you're free of it. It's not gone. It's now energy that you can use. It used to be energy that was just fueling your pain. Now it's energy that can be in your art, in your music, in your sports, in just some, I put when I was a teen, I put my fist through the wall. A lot of us have this experience. I was furious. I put my fist through the wall. It was, it was cheap plaster, and my fist went right through, and that was satisfying. But there was, I didn't break a finger, luckily, and I'm a guitar player too. So it's like that was a stupid thing to do. When my son has energy like that welling up, my advice is do push-ups. Take that moment where the energy is it's painful and tormenting you, and you're like, I want to punch the wall, I want to punch the wall. Instead, hit the ground and do 25 push-ups, because then you just took that energy and you benefited yourself.
It reminds me of a book that I read many years ago, and I'm blanking on the title, I hate to say, but it basically argues that animals don't experience post-traumatic stress syndrome in the way that humans do, because when they experience extreme degrees of stress, let's say after a predator is hunting them, they're able to sit literally...
Flap.
Yeah, exactly, which humans don't really do. Now, my version of punching the wall, which, by the way, I did, but we won't talk about that. Right, I remember like weightlifting being my right. Certainly not this wall. My modality would be lifting weights until that energy was somehow released. But lifting weights and punching the wall, I don't know if it necessarily really heightens my awareness. And when you talk about yogic practice being at its most fundamental level, a modality of bringing us closer to awareness, I think I'm beginning to understand why it might relate to psychedelics. Did you throw me a breadcrumb when you said that? And if so, maybe you could
not really.
A little deeper into the forest.
That's right. So it's you sometimes hear this in the psychedelic community, set and setting. That's like a mantra for the psychedelic community, and that's considered to be the thing that's going to make or break your trip. You're going to have a mushroom trip, let's say, that is going to change your life, change your perspective, lead to transformation that you see in all areas of your life, or you're going to have like the opposite. You're going to have a terrible, terrible experience and be clenched up in fear for a long time. Set and setting. So exactly what is the mindset? Because that's what it is. It's set mindset. Primarily,
right.
What are you going into it with? And I would argue that these things, which I sometimes call loosely yogas, like weightlifting, can be a yoga. If you go into weightlifting and you're like, and I would argue if you're really deeply into it and you want to succeed, you will wind up with this approach. It'll come naturally. And it's like, are you just like, this is what I do, it's time to lift some weights, and you lift weights, or are you like, here I go. You know, what did I bench last time? No, I'm serious. That's me at the gym.
No.
That's me at the gym. And I get, like, I go to the gym too, and I get, like, weird looks because I'm doing, like, yogic breathing and stuff. But I'll tell you when the looks stop is when I'm up there doing 20 pull-ups. Or I'm up there, you know, hitching kettlebells onto my ankles and doing stuff like that, because it's about the mind. And it's about, ultimately, is your energy available to you? So in the psychedelics, like it depends on the psychedelic. So we can talk about lots of different psychedelics, but there might be this surge of energy, and that could be, you could dance the night away with that, and that's awesome. You can hang out with friends and have a great time. You can torment yourself. So when it gets negative, then you're this being with this high level of energy that's going into those habitual self-antagonizing, self-downing places, dark places. So part of the mindset is preparation. So yoga, basically just any of these things. So what I would do with somebody that I was helping to bring yoga to a psychedelic state is find out what their natural yoga already was. And if the person is a weightlifter and they're really committed to it, and they can find that kind of single pointed mind with weightlifting or whatever it is, music, whatever it is, find the connection.
So when you say that you work to integrate yoga with psychedelic practice, what exactly does that look like from the perspective of someone who may be considering having their very first psychedelic experience?
It's very different per psychedelic. Can I talk about ketamine first?
Of course.
Is that cool? So
yes.
Yeah. So in the ketamine state, the psychedelic ketamine state, are you familiar with the state? Can I ask that?
You
don't have
I
to
think
answer,
that.
Scott.
Well, no. I have never been involved in the psychedelics world. I am on the same journey that the folks watching and listening to this are, learning as I go along. Not only that, but even if I had, I might not have used that particular psychedelic. And so I think that, and as audiences anyone who's listening to this or watching this may only be vaguely familiar with it as a psychedelic. So my recommendation is start from the ground up, Henry.
Yes. Okay, so I'll tell a story about how I actually found ketamine, or ketamine found me. depending on how you look at the universe. I was spending a lot of time with a friend who was a young man, a former student of mine. Actually, I taught in high school, but also earlier, and he was dying of stage 4 cancer, and it was. And we would spend long afternoons together talking philosophy, playing music together, and stuff like that. It was
that is
very
so
sad. Yeah. This was a pivotal period of my life. And I was called. Of all the people in his universe, he chose me to be the companion in those months. Probably because we have a lot of common interests, and sharp sense of humor and like just shooting the shit, but also because he knew that I thought a lot about death. That I myself, because of a background with PTSD and depression, anxiety, have dug in very deeply to philosophy and yoga and other ways of I don't want to say healing the person, but also seeing the world. So he decided, wisely, my body's falling apart. What am I going to be able to actually progress in as I get sicker? And the realization that, you're not going to, he was a rock climber. You're not going to get better at rock climbing when you're on chemo and your body's falling apart. You're not going to get better. He actually became an amazing musician because he could practice the guitar until very late, and that was tremendously inspiring. But the choice to sort of go with philosophy and try to find meaning and try to, he wouldn't have said spirituality because that would have sounded foo-foo to him, and probably a lot of your audience. I don't blame you. The associations in the commercial world with that are pretty sickening, often can be. So anyway, we would spend these long afternoons together, and at some point he knew that I like to experiment with things safely, and he gave me some ketamine. I had never done it before. I'd heard about it. We'd had some conversations about it, and he had undergone some treatments where the ketamine had suddenly wiped away his fear. So he would go into some procedure to have something removed for something, and they would just using it for pain. And he would wind up having a kind of transcendent experience where all the fear would dissolve. Yeah. And he would be just ecstatic. And he would, I would get these garbled texts from the hospital sometimes, like, holy shit. And he'd be talking about like chakras and other yoga stuff in the ketamine state. Not very coherent, but then, we'd touch base later. So it was after one of those afternoons with him that I accidentally took too much. He gave me his medical grade bottle, and I portioned it, and I read up on it, and I knew it wasn't dangerous. But I spent the day with him. I was feeling very you can imagine, a kind of emotionally wrenched. I was feeling a lot of love. I was feeling a lot of deep sadness, and I just said to my friend, he wasn't there. I'd gone home, but I said, cheers, buddy, and I swigged down the remaining ketamine. And very soon, 15 minutes later, I knew just from the steepness of the come up that it was way more than I had bargained for. And I knew, and I maybe you can relate to this with PTSD, but some of my, this is I'm a person who was scared shitless of psychedelics for most of my life. So I'm a musician. I travel in a lot of these circles where people think, oh, you must be into psychedelics. That's who you are. But I avoided them because I was scared that they would wrench something out of me that I did not want to or could not deal with, really. In this K-hole, which was, again, after this day spending with my friend, and it was a K-hole. So within a half an hour, I did not know who I was. But my yoga practice was still in me. So rather than procedural memory, you learn how to tie your shoes, you learn how to ride a bike.
Right.
Actually, you're not maybe thinking about this, but when you learn weightlifting technique, that stuff is stored in parts of your brain that are not conscious. It's deep. And when I was in this state, it was like this. It could have broken either way. And there could have been this, holy shit, I don't do psychedelics. This is going to scare I don't know who I am. I got to scream for my wife. I got to go to an emergency room. I was having all that kind of shit. And on the other branch was the breath. Wow. And this rhythmic practice that I had just been cultivating as a yogi, to deal with PTSD, anxiety, depression. That's what I was always using yoga for, was just to try to feel better. And suddenly I'm in this ketamine state. profound psychedelic state, and I'm doing yoga. I mean, I'm sitting on a cushion. I'm sitting in a dark room on a cushion, and I'm doing yoga breathing. And it transformed that experience from potentially, horrific, scary as fuck. I mean, like, I didn't intend to do anything more than just relax a little bit. And now I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I am. And it turned it into an absolutely transcendent experience, this experience of, anything I say will be a cliche. Like an experience of being one with the universe, experience of being pure love. It's going to be cliche, but that was it. And that's when I realized that it was because the yoga was there for me, because I had practiced to the extent where I could call on those practices, even in a state where I did not know who I was.
So just so I understand correctly what was happening, while you were in the psychedelic state, you realized that you were in deeper, like you said earlier, than you
realize. There's no me to realize. To explain the peak dissociative ketamine state is very hard. There's no agency, there's no ego, there's no self saying, let me do this. It just happened automatically.
Well, then did your stepping into a yogic state happen automatically, or did on some level you consciously choose to do that?
Maybe, but I was certainly not aware of that in the way that, a person operating, outside the ketamine state would say, I'm doing this now, I choose to do this. This was just like, here I am breathing. I mean, not even here I am, but breathing is happening.
So what happened after the experience was over? Or was there anything else about the experience that is germane to this conversation?
Yes. So when the come down happens, of the when then the ego comes back online. This is the rough arc of a ketamine trip. Is you have this profound dissociation. It's not a matter of like with LSD or something where it's like, oh wow, I'm having a crazy experience. There's no I. The I is offline. And then when you're coming back down, then the ego comes back, and now you have a sense of self, but there's a separation of the ordinary thinking, and then we talk about the mental health crisis and people feeling anxiety. What's powering that anxiety is a thought loop that's never ending and emotional responses that are never ending. Ceaseless pain, emotional pain. And you got this golden opportunity in the come down of the ketamine state to see, like, the body has this uncanny relaxation, especially if you've been doing yoga breathing for 3 hours. I was in that thing for hours. Wow. And my body is like, and then I can see, like, almost like an observer. That's why they call it a dissociative. You're seeing these little thoughts come back, and before the thought can do what it usually does, which is grab the emotions and make it all seem real and like, oh shit, you're like, that's a thought there. I'm having a thought. And you can feel, and it's trying to grab my heart, it's trying to grab my throat, it's trying to grab my belly, and you're like, I'm not going to let it. I'll just watch it. And that's like, if I was a therapist, I'd be like, holy shit, that's a golden opportunity. There can't be any better opportunity. And I would imagine that people are doing that, trying to go in there with their patients and do that kind of ego restorative, repairing type of therapy in that state.
If I were then, after hearing the story, going to say, okay, this is an opportunity to bring something that will enhance my psychedelic experience into the psychedelic experience that I am planning, is it something then that I need to learn in advance? Is that like a whole separate practice that I need to engage in, being yoga, before I can really effectively integrate that into the psychedelic experience? And by the way, on the topic of integration, does yoga have any relevance to the post-psychedelic state integration process?
Yeah, awesome question, Scott. Like, look, like, yes, like when we say like psychedelics good, yoga good, if you emerge from your psychedelic experience with a yoga practice, you're going to just be, your breath will be, you'll have that experience more often of, wow, I'm simultaneously relaxed and focused and engaged. I mean, yeah, so that's that. I mean, the role of yoga and integration could take any number of forms. I would say, like, you going into a psychedelic experience specifically to deal with PTSD, and then you could talk, you could either talk to your therapist or just work it out for yourself. What am I trying to get at? What is, this is in the intention setting phase. So you say, what am I trying to get out of this? And then, like, if I were talking to you about it, which I am right now, I'd say, like, look at the things like weightlifting in your life. Look at the examples in your life where you have brought a certain kind of single point of focus to something. And the chances are there's a lot of overlap already there with what I would be proposing people try in the psychedelic state. I mean, you for example, I'm sure you go in there and you're like, there's breath. Your breath is working. You have a strong sense of intention. You might have actual things you tell yourself to motivate you if you're like, oh, that's the last rep. No, come on, I can do a few more reps, and things like that. All those devices are things that you have already programmed into your body mind. So with a little extra preparation, they'll be available to you in the psychedelic state.
Henry, I associate yoga with, to be a little bit cliched myself, healthy, clean living. The people that I know who are really into yoga are people that I would have a hard time imagining advocating, connecting their practice with psychedelics. Is there resistance or any challenge with regards to the idea of integrating yoga and psychedelic practices to enhance the outcomes of both?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Look, this is I'm sure the consonant with what Webdelics is all about. These substances in general are not toxic, are very low toxicity compared to, you name it. I mean, particularly the classical psychedelics, LSD and shrooms, are almost zero toxicity. Ketamine is a little more toxic, but it's still, compared to alcohol. When I had that K-hole that lasted for 5 hours, I didn't have a hangover or anything the next day. So it shouldn't be. This is regarding sort of the ideal world context of your question. Is the yoga community, and by the way, plenty of people are. So the yoga studio where I'm situated at, and my main teacher and a lot of the folks that I work with are really excited. Like, they have done some microdosing, they've done yoga in conjunction with microdosing, and they are not, there may have been a little bit of overcoming some stigma at first, but it was very clear from the get-go that this was actually a real practice. There are, as you could probably imagine, there are excerpts of very traditional texts that you could say, yeah, this says don't do this. Like, for example, the Yoga Sutra says don't do intoxicants. But then, I don't think, what is an intoxicant? So then the scholars will dig into that. What is it an intoxicant if your main purpose is to get fucked up and be removed from your life, which is not the way you're approaching psychedelics to heal from PTSD. Because I say, having done a lot of that work myself, it's like, I'm going to face some shit. I'm doing this in order to, psychedelics, open my mind so that I can actually become more intimate with my pain. It's like the opposite of an intoxicant being like, get me out of here. You know what I mean? So it's very possible to have a fairly traditional approach to yoga and say, absolutely, these things, we don't want to get addicted to them, but these substances are very powerful. I'm going to use a Sanskrit word. Is it okay if I use a Sanskrit word?
Of course, so long as you explain what it is.
Okay. right. It's called. Wait, should I not?
No, go ahead. Just explain what it is.
Okay. Upaya, which means skillful means. It's a tool. So, I'm copying this from Ram Dass. I'm assuming you've heard of Ram Dass.
I have never heard. Look, I'm the most naive person in the world, Henry. You got to explain everything to me like I'm a baby.
Okay. Ram Dass. No, Ram Dass was just he was a chair of a psych department in the '60s, and with Timothy Leary at Harvard was doing a lot of LSD, and it just like it kind of blew his mind to the point where he said, "I need to get out of here. I need to get out of academia. I need to find some real answers." He went and became a sadhu in India, and basically then he wrote this book called "Be Here Now." Recommended. It's got a lot of pictures too. If you're feeling like that,
I love pictures.
Yeah, and basically that's the gist of it is that like psychedelics are a legitimate upaya, a skillful means for spiritual practice, but he also has a lot of downsides too. You don't want to become dependent on them. You don't want to become they can lead you astray if you don't do them right.
What would a world look like in which yogic practices and psychedelics were regularly integrated?
I think it would do a world for people that are suffering. I just think you referred to the mental health crisis. Everybody I know, depressed, anxious. Some people are coping better than other people, but there's a serious fucking problem going on in this society, and it has to do with the fact that people believe that they're their egos and that's it, that's all they are, and they believe that because the ego's yapping away, it's chattering, it's making the feelings happen, and they get stuck there. And psychedelics are wonderful, but particularly psychedelics just scaffolded and supported by mind-body practices that are centuries old like yoga would just do incredible things for people. Anxiety, depression, PTSD.
The takeaway I'm hearing is that 1 + 1 can equal 5. We have two historically discrete but parallel practices that can help us deal with a lot of the traumas that people are enduring and that are leading to a lot of social and personal dysfunction. Combining them together could, like you just said, create a scaffolding upon which outcomes that multiply the impact of both of these can really help transform both individuals and the worlds in which they live. Is there any other last hour takeaway that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I thank you for this. I think that what you just said is very inspiring, and I really do believe that. I believe that most people are good. People aren't acting that way, and society sucks. So that's another one of these paradoxes: is why are all my friends wonderful people, and why are there so many dysfunctionalities in the society? And I think if it was as simple as just had more access to their own energy, as opposed to this kind of thing, because this is the kind of thing that's going to lead you to like road rage. It's going to lead you to explode your spouse. It's going to lead you to if people just were more harmonized in their energy, a lot of the social problems would not vanish overnight, but would get a lot better.
Look, when you think about these sorts of feeling states and mindsets that people get into, as I'm listening to you extrapolating out small scale things like road rage and punching the wall, we can think about it even in terms of impacting world scope events like wars. And anything that we can have to help us move beyond the devastation that sort of thing has repeatedly caused throughout history, to me, would be huge. Henry, how can people find out more about you? How can they contact you?
Well, you can always Google me, Henry Kandel. I'm going to be the Upaya project, or the Upaya method, are going to be launched soon, within the next couple of months, along with a series of instructional videos for specifically Ketamine State yoga. So everything I know, I will be sharing with the world. Everything I've developed over the last few years. I will also be putting out videos on integration of yoga and other psychedelics. There will be, if you're in New York City, I urge you to check out the goings-on at the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society. And I hope that my book is out fairly soon. It will be out soon enough, but sooner rather than later. And check that out, Yoga of the Ketamine State. And a lot of these ideas it can be very technical in teaching yoga, but everyone can get something out of it.
I can't wait. Henry, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your wisdom and your insights. It's been genuinely revelatory.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. For those of you who are listening or watching, keep tuning in. In upcoming episodes, we'll discuss the relationship between psychedelics and a whole host of other unexpected topics, such as leadership development. And in an episode that will touch the heart of everyone who listens, and by the way, which relates to something that we were talking about earlier in this episode, we're going to have a guest on who will discuss the relationship between psychedelics and coping with the impending end of life. It is going to be a profoundly moving episode, and it goes as to the heart of everything that we're trying to do here on the Webdelics podcast. I'm stoked even thinking about what is to come, and I want you to be too. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to learn more, be sure to subscribe, leave a review or a comment, and tell folks that you care about what we're doing here. Also, don't forget to follow Webdelics on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And be sure to check out our website at webdelics.com. That's WEBDELICS.com. And sign up for our blog so you can get trusted information about plant medicine and psychedelics. Then join us next time for another episode of the Webdelics podcast.